I think I know the culprit. Welcome back to the Mentor Roulette grind. This time featuring what I would call the Duty Rescue Squad, with the amount of duties we, the community, landed into to help and promptly cleared. And for Duty 1, we went to Suzaku as Samurai. Another fight where knowing how to do it on Extreme can mess you up on Normal. Why? Well, on Extreme you're meant to separate the 4 smaller Phoenix adds into 4 corners and deal with a fragile feather near each one. On Normal though, all of the feathers are perhaps slightly more evenly chonky, but you can simply handle all 4 adds in the center. Whoops. For some more samurai-centric stuff, a question that came up was in regards to using tricks to optimize Higanbana timing at level 70. At this level, Samurai doesn't have that many ways to efficiently align the timing at which they Higanbana, and if you missed a window to do it, well, optimally you have to wait until after you finish the Setsugeki you were making, which is far too long. One of the ways Samurai have to overcome this problem is to use the Yaten NP Gyoten trick, which pushes back your normal rotation by 1 GCD. As Yaten and Gyoten each are just as cost effective as Shinten, that part is free. The one thing that makes things complicated is that the NP has slightly less potency than the average of the 1-2-3 combos, and slightly more Kenki generation, which sort of evens things out. The part that makes things complicated is that this trick also pushes back your next Setsugeki, which is a lot stronger. The gain is that delaying the reapplication of Higanbana by about 2 seconds might get you an extra tick you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. The loss is that you might lose a Midare in the long term, but that doesn't change the fact that this trick gives Samurai a lot more freedom over their rotation than you'd normally expect. The trick sort of became a lot less significant when Samurai became able to do double Midare every time instead of just once per minute. Except that isn't the case at level 70. Long story short, I forgot about this option in this run, so I didn't even consider it. But it is an interesting discussion, because whether it is worth it or not sort of depends on a few factors. Will it save your Higanbana cast? Will it cost you a Midare? That kind of stuff. For Duty 2, we're back on Howling Blade as Machinist, and thankfully Ilana is here as Red Mage. Why? Well, at one point, both of our healers go down in the same moment, and that would have been a wipe if not for Ilana. Aside from that mess up, most of the duty was pretty alright. At the end of the duty, I also almost died due to solving the Beacon Moonlight in the wrong direction. An interesting little detail about Machinist rotations is in how Wildfire works. The target is to fit 6 GCDs inside the window, which includes 5 blazing shots, but the 6th GCD could be anything, either right after Wildfire or right after the 5th blazing shot. An extension of this kind of trick is also how Full Metal Field, by being an AoE attack, can be used during Hypercharge without spending a charge, which can be used for optimization too. Really strange. For Duty 3, we went to Sophia as Pictomancer. And at this level, Pictomancer doesn't have a raid buff, and neither does our raid team, so we just have to make sure the muses go out on cooldown. The only other trick we can do is that the Sophia fight has multiple little moments here and there where there is no attackable target, and if we have something to paint at each of these moments, that would be great. And by sheer random chance, I think I nailed that pretty consistently. For Duty 4, we went to Underkeep as Monk, with a first-timer tank. Pretty early on in the duty, probably due to us doing too much damage, my perfect balance drifted such that I have 2 in the odd minute and 1 in the even instead, and every time I had an opportunity to fix it, I either forgot to or chose not to for one reason or another. When it came to the final boss, for the mechanic with the expanding cones, I spotted one safe spot and specifically moved to a different safe spot because I identified that the first timer tank was closest to that safe spot, and I anticipated that they would probably dodge last moment when they realized the problem, and I do think that was roughly how it actually played out. Yet another case where telling the party outright is your first time can sometimes help. For Duty 5, we went to Inside the Glove as Dancer. We don't even have standard finish. For Duty 6, we went to Odin as Gunbreaker, and this run went very smoothly. A funny thing that stood out to me a bit is that the Astrologian was doing what I call maintenance healing. Maintaining Aspected Helios on the party, and at times maintaining Aspected Benefic unnecessarily too. Now, there's nothing wrong with using Aspected Helios or Benefic as needed, but what made it stand out to me was that they almost like clockwork would use Aspected Helios exactly when their hot was running out, which can lead to a lot of overhealing. That being said, this specific fight has a lot of random AoE damage just going out, so as long as it doesn't waste too much MP, this might actually be the safest way to do this fight. And indeed, we made it through very smoothly. For duty 7, we once again somehow land in Forgotten Triangle as Black Mage. I don't know what to tell you, no flare and mobs packed so loosely that freeze is hardly worth it either, and mobs dying too fast. I felt like I spent most of the time just moving around. Although, there was something really funny about both tanks seemingly insisting on fighting the same mobs repeatedly, which actually endangered some of the crates we were meant to protect, and also endangered a certain small lizard in a big hat too. But we still succeeded, thankfully. For duty 8, we end up with Ramuh Extreme, again, as Paladin. We start by going over the tactics in detail, except I leave out the bit about the presence of orbs increasing the blue circle AoE damage, because I identified we had at least 2 community players that also know this, so we can solve it without the first timers knowing. The fight starts off with my co-tank early on accidentally overcharging a bit at the worst time, so I have to overcharge too to offset our debuffs. During this, Ilana and the Astrologian go down. We manage to steadily push through the ad phase, then in the final phase for the first Rolling Thunders, we end up with my co-tank wanting to refresh their debuff a tad bit early, overlapping with both Rolling Thunder players trying to resolve the mechanics simultaneously, removing a scary amount of orbs all at once. But it somehow works out, with the Astrologian and Samurai dying in the meantime. Our Machinist also got feared and not saved and ultimately died as a result, with the Astrologian going down with them apparently. Due to the chaos, and probably the Scholar being distracted resing, Ilana goes down to good old damage. I accidentally overcharge, and at a somewhat awkward timing too, but this ends up being irrelevant as Ramuh goes down first try. Nice. For duty 9, we went to Mount Gulg as Dark Knight. As the healer has a return icon, I wasn't sure if they could handle the full mega pull, so I pull smaller. As the pull finishes up, the healer clearly demonstrates wanting me to pull way bigger by running ahead, so for the rest of the duty I decided to pull as big as possible, which turns out to be totally fine. I should add that I've done the full Mount Gulg Giga pull as a level 79 Dark Knight, undergeared too, so this isn't a tank job issue, but rather mainly a cumulative skill issue across the party, and yeah, no, not every party can do these pulls, and that's fine, but this one could. It is unfortunate that the first Giga pull is at the very start, as it makes it difficult to determine if the party can handle it before the opportunity is passed. That said, we cleared the rest of the duty very safely, including getting to the funny pixel safe spot on the second boss. For duty 10, we went to Keep of the Lake as Warrior, and this run went very nicely. There were some points where I wondered if the sheer amount of Cure 2 casting was necessary, but hey, no one died. Although on the first boss, the White Mage almost went down to trying to fix being out of position far too late. Remember, if you're trying to escape several overlapping AoEs, often you have a better chance of survival by committing to a spot where you will only be hit by one of the AoEs, rather than risking getting hit by 2 or more. For duty 11, we went to Castrum Meridianum as Gunbreaker, and yeah, not much interesting happened here. We pushed through, as you can probably predict. I think the only thing really worth mentioning is how on Black Eft, since the boss is ultimately the only thing that needs to die to progress, with Gunbreaker while AoEing the ads, making sure to burst strike the boss to not waste cartridges might actually be optimal. For duty 12, we went to Ravana as Dancer. Things went just fine, although it did feel like the butterfly phase took weirdly long. And Swift Slaughter also seemed like it almost went through. The butterfly thing is definitely the more interesting bit, since ignoring too many of the butterflies, they weren't ignored, they just took time, and letting their cast go through, buffs the attack Ravana performs when he says, "Rejoice in the glory of combat!" by slashing the raid team and applying a Vuln stack per successful butterfly before delivering his final blow. An interesting aside to that is that on Extreme, it is very possible to entirely skip the whole butterfly phase due to HP thresholds, even when synced. And this is when the Duty Rescue Squad engages. For duty 13, we went to M9N, Arcadion's Vamp Fatale, as a 15-minute replacement Viper. And I wasn't the only one, as Shaq, Rost and Ilana also showed up to fill the party. We were told by those that remained that what went wrong was that the party completely goofed it on the ad phase. The phase with the flails from above. I'll say on my first few goes at this fight, that phase was definitely also a bit scary with strangers, but I'm shocked it got so bad that people left. Now, with this group of gamers, we easily made it all the way to that ad phase, and let's talk a bit about it while we're here. It starts with a raid wide, then we have 2 souls gradually moving through the arena that hurts and applies a dot if they touch you. There are also 2 bigger souls that sort of block off the outer parts of the arena occasionally that has a similar effect. Then 2 tower soaks appear, which can be out of melee range, which spawns ads to kill or they explode. A bit later, another raid wide, followed by another set of towers, followed by another raid wide, and then another raid wide, and that's that. Where this can get lethal very quickly is that if you miss a tower entirely, then what happens is the tower being missed, raid wide damage, into Killer Voice raid wide, into Flail Explodes raid wide, which on top of everything else could be lethal. But if you pay attention, this whole intermission is quite manageable. For duty 14, we are a 10-minute replacement summoner on Bismarck Extreme, with Ilana along as Sage. The first bit of the fight goes very easily to no one's surprise, I'm sure. The Serpent ad phase also passes with no issues at all. Now, I always keep forgetting how this phase works, so I will repeat what someone told me on the stream. Attacking the ad that matches your debuff results in them reflecting damage back at you. You still do damage to them, but it hurts you too. What can make this really difficult is if the tanks are given the wrong debuff, so they have to swap quickly right as the phase begins, as that rarely goes smoothly. As the final phase begins, I start by finding myself stunned overlapping with a circle and line AoE, but somehow survive. The first wither we get is the yellow one, which means kill the vapor bubbles, stand in the center, run back to the center after knockback. And this goes reasonably well. We get Bismarck down to around 15% when I and Ilana choose to bail, and the rest of the party, well, we have a dancer, but the rest fell to their deaths. Remember, on Extreme, it's on you to jump off in time. We managed to coordinate our races to get both tanks back, and once things stabilize, I start hard racing the party one by one, as my damage isn't needed during this bit anyway. The result is that we have the entire raid back on their feet well in time before the next chance to hit Bismarck. Very nice. And finally for duty 15, we went to good King Moggle Mog, praise be his fluffiness, Extreme as Sage. We also have a tank and healer from the Bismarck run before. We agreed to go over tactics only for a summoner to accidentally hit the boss, and instead of going for it, I just continue my explanation as the chaos unfolds before me. I go over the important parts and also vaguely explain some of the examples of the random mechanics that can happen throughout the fight. Now, on our first real attempt, we have some issues with some careless damage. Notably, the samurai just mindlessly attacking the same Moogle until it dies. We had a lot of other chaos happening at the time, but long story short, this pull was never gonna make it, because the Black Mage Moogle just got murdered as quickly as a samurai can do it. Then for the second wave, the Black Mage Moogle got murdered as quickly as a samurai can do it. And then in the final wave, no I'm not joking, the samurai decided to push it to 11 and limit break a Moogle to death, which, ding ding, activated the final countdown and we wiped. Not that we stood a chance, as the damage was already done by the time the second wave was over. Before we tried again, we went over how important it is to be careful with your damage, including telling the samurai to maybe not use limit break on mobs they were told to be careful with. Then, for the second attempt, in wave 1, we start with a bit of chaos with the tank Moogles, but ultimately manage to get the entire Mogsguard to at least around a 5th HP remaining before anything dies, which is solid. The entire party is also still alive. For wave 2, we start off with the tank death. I wonder if the king needed to be swapped yet. This chaos then led to the other tank dying, as well as the summoner, although the summoner was much less geared than the rest of the party. And then my co-healer dies. As it turns out, both of the tank Moogles are just on the loose causing mayhem. With about half the party dead and all this chaos unfolding, we still somehow manage to get most of the Mogsguard to less than a 5th of their HP before wave 3 begins. We also barely survived the Archer Moogle doing Rain of Death on 3 random players. Pretty confident that this guy had gotten some motivation from the king. Speaking of which, around this time I mentioned for the tanks to remember to alternate the king, and like clockwork, that's when the king takes a run across the entire arena. I guess they forgot. We get as many players up as we can, prioritizing the summoner as they have a raise, but I didn't see them raise the samurai. Then the White Mage Moogle casts Palm Holy, which can only be stopped by attacking it, at 12% HP, forcing our hand and starting the final countdown with the samurai dead. We start the attack on the king, starting at 8.7% with about half the time remaining, but the Viper melee LB takes it and we are victorious. Very nice, but also extremely chaotic. Yet another clean set, and according to my predictions, with the current pace, we need around 15 duties per week to finish all 2,000 Mentor Roulettes before the next expansion lands. We also reached 10/13ths on the achievement this time. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Twitch or Ko-Fi. Links in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, before Tsuwamegaishi was reworked to not have a cooldown, it was actually pretty common when optimizing to use options such as Yaten and Pigyoten on Samurai to align timings in the rotation for burst windows. While this is still a thing somewhat, the reason why it kind of fell out of favor a lot is because having more Midare Setsugekas was usually better than having less but better timed ones.